Chapter 4: Timeline and Sources of History. History is an unending dialogue between the present and the past, between the society of today and the society of yesterday. We can fully understand the present only in the light of past. By E. H. Carr. The image is of National Museum, New Delhi. Such museums preserve objects from the past, such as statues, coins, and ornaments, all of which help us understand our history. The big questions: how do we measure historical time? How can these sources help us understand history? How did early humans live? How do we learn about the past? Think about it. What is the earliest memory you can recollect? Do you remember how old you were at that time? Those memories together are a part of your past, maybe going 5 or 6 years back. How do you think understanding the past will help us understand the present world? You will discover in science that the earth has a very long history, of which we humans occupy a tiny part, the most recent one. History, the study of the human past. Figure 4.1. Timeline of a few important stages in the evolution of life on Earth. Blue picture represent billions years ago. Dark blue picture represent million years ago. Green pictures represent years ago. First, we can see light blue color. Then there is 4.5 billion years ago, Earth formed. Then there is first cell. Then there is atmospheric oxygen, 2.33 billion years. Then there is bacteria, sponge and fungi, corals, insects, fish vertebrates, amphibians, sharks, reptiles, birds, mammals, flowers and bees. Ten lakh primates, 1 lakh fire, 3 lakh Homo sapiens, 6,500 writing. Sorry, that was not 1 lakh, that is 10 lakh. Many people study the history of the earth. Some of them are trained to cover the secrets left beneath the earth's surface and help us learn about its past and also our past. Figure 4.2.1, Geologist. Figure 4.2.2, Paleontologist. Figure 4.2.3, Anthropologist. Figure 4.2.4, Archaeologist. Over these 4 pictures and the activities involved from top left. Geologist. Figure 4.2.1. Study the physical features of the earth, like the soil, stones, hills, mountains, rivers, seas, oceans, and other such part of earth. Paleontologist. Figure 4.2.2. Study the remains of plants, animals, and humans from millions of years ago in the form of fossils. Anthropologist. Figure 4.2.3. study human societies and cultures from the oldest time to the present. Archaeologists, figure 4.2.4, study the past by digging up remains that people, plants, and animals left behind, such as tools, pots, beads, figurines, toys, bones, and teeth of animals and humans, burnt grains, parts of houses or bricks, among others. Fossils, impressions of footprints or part of plants or animals that are found preserved within layer of soil or rocks. How is time measured in history? Each society and culture has its own way of measuring time. Major events such as the birth of an important person or the start of a rural region have often marked the beginning of a new era. At present, the Georgian era, a distinct period of time. The Georgian calendar is commonly used worldwide, side by side. Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Chinese, and other calendars are also used for calculating the dates of festival and other auspicious events. In the West, the conventional year for Jesus Christ's birth has generally been taken to be the starting point for this calendar. Years are counted forward from these points and used to be marked with AD, an abbreviation for Latin phrases that refers to the year after Jesus' birth. However, this is now called the Common Era or CE across the world. For example, 1947, the year India gained independence, can be written in 1947 AD, sometimes AD 1947 or 1947 Common Era. Similarly, the years before the conventional date for the birth of Jesus are counted backward and used to be marked with BC or before Christ. They are now called before Common Era or BCE. For example, 560 BCE. Georgian calendar, the calendar now used the world over, it has 12 months, adding up to 365 days, and a leap year every 4 years. However, century years, for example, 1800, 1900, 2000 are leap years, only if they are multiple of 400. So, in the 3 centenary years above, only 2000 is a leap year. For example, 560 BC in an approximate year of birth of Gautam Buddha, whom we figure 4.3. Timeline of some main events since 3 lakh before Common Era. First example of rock art in the world, Ice Age, auspicious, favorable or bringing luck or instance an auspicious beginning. We'll meet in chapter 7. Can you calculate how many years ago that was? Let's explore. Such calculations are simple, but there is a catch. In the Georgian calendar, there is no year 0. The year 1 Common Era follows immediately the year 1 before Common Era. Draw a simple timeline marking every year from 2 before Common Era to 2 Common Era. You will see that because of the absence of a year 0, only 3 years have passed between those two dates. So, to calculate the number of years between a BCE date and CE date, you should add them but subtract 1. In the above case, 2 plus 2 minus 1 is equal to 3. Practice a few examples with your classmates. For example, to return to the question about the Buddha, suppose we are now in 2024 Common Era. Then the Buddha was born 560 plus 2024 minus 1, 2583 years ago. Then there is a picture which shows different timelines like end of last ice age, first settlement and beginning of agriculture, pottery technology in Indian subcontinent, the world's first cities in Mesopotamia, beginning of copper metallurgy, Indus Saraswati civilization, birth of the Buddha, Ashoka, birth of Jesus. We are here right now. A timeline. See figure 4.3 on page 62 and 63 is a convenient tool to mark such events as it shows a sequence of dates and events covering any particular period. It runs from the beginning of humanity to the present with a few important landmarks. Note that the dotted portion marks a skipped period. Otherwise, this timeline would have to be almost 3 meters long. Then there is a picture in which we can see birth of Buddha, then Jesus Christ, a girl, and a prediction for future. A timeline also helps in understanding the order in which historical events take place. For example, even without looking at dates, you can now see that the birth of Buddha occurs before that of Jesus. Don't miss out. Along with a year and a decade, a period of 10 years, we often use other terms to understand longer duration of time. Two of these are quite common, used when learning about history. First, century. It is any period of 100 years. In history, specific centuries are counted every 100 years, starting from the year First Common Era. For instance, we are currently in the 21st century Common Era, which runs from 2001 to 2100. Second, remaining of one. The centuries before Common Era are calculated beginning from the year 1 before Common Era and keep going back in time. For example, the 3rd century before Common Era would include the year 300 before Common Era to 200 before Common Era. Second one, millennium. It is any period of 1000 years in history. Specific centuries are counted every 1000 years from the year 1 Common Era. For instance, we are currently in the 3rd millennium Common Era, which begins in 2100 Common Era and will go up to 3000 Common Era. As with centuries, millenniums BCE are also calculated beginning from 1 BCE and go backwards. So the first millennium before Common Era would include the year 1 BCE to 1000 BCE. In the timeline given on page 62 and 63, figure 4.3, can you mark the beginning of 8th millennium before Common Era? Note, in English, the plural of millennium is millenniumus or millennium. Both are correct. Let's explore. Create a timeline stretching from 1900 Common Era to the current year and place the dates of birth of your grandparents, parents, siblings, and yourself. Also mark the year that the 20th century Common Era begins with and ends with. Don't miss out. Do you know How calendars have been traditionally made in India? Many Indian calendars rely on the positions of the sun and the moon to define the months of the year. A panchang is a book of tables which list the days of each month, along with related astronomical data. For instance, it precisely predicts events like solar and lunar eclipse, times for sunrise and sunset, etc. Panchangs, still widely used in India, often also give weather prediction for the year, dates and timing of festivals, and more. What are the sources of history? Sources of history: a place, person, text, or any object from which we gather an information about the past or event period. Let's explore. Can you collect information about the least three generations of your family on your mother's and father's sides? Create a family tree with your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Find out their names, what they did for a living, and where they were born. Also write the sources from where you got this information. How did you find details about your family's past? Did you rely on things like photographs, diaries, ID cards, or memories from your parents and relatives? Think about it. Have you ever seen old coins, books, clothes, jewelry, or utensils in and around your house? What type of information can we gain from such objects or from old houses or buildings? Every object or structure tells a story and is like a piece in a jigsaw puzzle. The objects that you see around your house convey something of the history of your family. Similarly, we can put together historical events through a variety of sources, but keeping in mind that in case of history, quite a few pieces of the puzzles may remain missing. Observe the figure at the bottom of the page. It brings together the main source of history. You do not need to remember them all now. There is a figure which shows sources of history. In that, first one is oral source, which represent genealogical and folklore. Indian literary source, Indian literature, foreign accounts. In Indian literature, we can see Vedas and Itihas, poems and plays, historical texts, collection of stories, scientific and technological texts. In foreign accounts, travelogue, historical chronicles, artistic source, paintings, sculptures, panels, excavation, human, animal and plant remain, tools and weapons, figurines and ornaments, pottery and toys, habitations and burials, archaeological sources, structures, monuments, mounds, inscriptions, manuscripts, copper plates, coins. So these are our sources of history. We will use some of them as we go along. When historians study, say, a king or queen of 1500 years ago, an ancient monument, a war or some items of trade, they take great care to gather information from as many sources as they can find and consult. Sometimes the sources confirm each other, the jigsaw pieces match. At other times, sources may give contradictory information. The jigsaw pieces don't match. In which case, they need to decide which source they can trust more. That is why they try to recreate the history of the period they are studying. Historian, a person who studies and writes about the past. Who contributes to all these sources of history? Historians themselves, but also archaeologists, epigraphists who study ancient inscriptions, anthropologists who study human societies and their cultures, expert in literature and languages, and some more. In addition, in the last 50 years or so, scientific studies have been contributing more and more to the reconstruction of the past. For example, studies of ancient climates, chemical studies of excavated material, and studies of genetics of ancient people have provided fresh insights which supplement the more usual sources. And when historians study recent history, which usually means the last 2 or 3 centuries, another source is newspaper for the last few decades. Electronic media, that is television, the internet, etc., can also be consulted. Genetics, the branch of biology that studies how in plants, animals, or humans, certain features and characteristics get passed down from one generation to the next. Let's explore. There are a few images of different sources of history on the next page. Who and what do you think are the object shows? Write down in the boxes next to the image and information that you get from these objects. Here is a coin and there are inscriptions, lion pillar, the beginning of human history. Modern humans, that is Homo sapiens, have walked the planet for about 3 lakh years ago. These appears to be a very long time. Yet, it is only a tiny fraction of Earth's history. Let us have a quick look at our early history. In the above picture, look at some activities of early humans in a rock shelter. Which one can you recognize? Give a brief description for each. Early humans faced many challenges from nature and lived in bands or groups to help each other. They were constantly seeking shelter and food and were mainly hunters and gatherers. This means they are relied on hunting and gathering. This means that they relied on hunting and collecting edible plants and fruits for their survival. Our early ancestors also had certain beliefs about the natural elements and possibly also some notion of afterlife. Afterlife, a life that begins after death. These groups lived in a temporary camps, rock shelter or caves, and communicated with each other using languages that are now lost. They used fire and started making objects that made their lives easier, like improved stone axes and blades, arrowheads and other tools. Aspects of their life are visible in rock paintings found in hundreds of caves all over the world. Some of those paintings depict simple figure or a few symbols. Others are more detailed and represent scenes with animals or humans. In time, these early humans learned to make a simple ornament such as stone or shell beads, pendants made of animal teeth, and sometimes exchange them with other groups. The first rock. Over long ages, the Earth's climate has gone through many changes. At certain times, it was very cold, and much of the Earth was covered with ice. This is called an ice age. As you will learn in greater detail in science, later when the climate warmed up, the ice partially melted and the resulting water swelled the existing rivers and eventually drained into the oceans. The last ice age lasted from over 1 lakh years ago to around 12,000 years ago. Afterwards, living conditions improved for humans. In many parts of the world, they started settling down and cultivating cereals and grains. They also domesticated animals such as cattle, goats, etc. With more food available, these communities grew in size and number and often settled down near rivers. This was not only because of the availability of water, but also because the soil would be more fertile there. It made the process of growing crops easier. Observe the scene on the next page. A deficit and agriculture community from a few millenniums ago is the main activities you can identify. Think about it. Both in the earlier picture of a rock shelter and in this one, men and women are given certain roles. While they may appear to be natural, they are not necessarily accurate and do not cover all situations. For instance, in a rock shelter, women may have helped prepare color for painting the rock or may have done some of the paintings in both scenes. Men have done some of the cooking or may have helped take care of children. Keeping in mind that we have only limited information, think about such roles and situations and discuss in class. As communities grew, so did their social complexity. Leaders or chieftains were responsible for the well-being of the people, and everyone collectively worked towards the community's welfare. For example, there was no sense of individual ownership. The lands were collectively sowed and harvested. Welfare, health, prosperity, and well-being. As time went by, hamlets grew into seizable villages that exchanged goods, mostly food, clothing, and tools. Slowly, networks of communication and exchange were established among those villages, and some of them grew into small towns. New technologies appeared, for example, pottery for making pots and other clay projects, and the use of metal, copper first, iron later, which helped make durable tools, objects of daily use, and ornaments. We will see in chapter 6 how this stage prepared for the emergence of what is called civilization. Hamlet, a small settlement or small village. For now, it is important to remember that these early progress of humanity had to face many challenges. At some critical times, humanity have almost disappeared, as some earlier species did. We will never know those early humans to which courage and persistence we owe our existence today. Before we move on, we have explored some ways to learn more about our past. The concept of a timeline helps us understand the sequence of historical events and different